Hey, Industrial Talk is brought to you by Cap Logistics. You want to minimize downtime? Absolutely. Increase reliability? You bet. Ensure operational profitability? Yes, you do. That means you need 24/7, 365 insights into your supply chain. Look no further. Cap Logistics. Go to caplogistics.com or just call them. They're great people. 800-227-2471. Also, TX1. Now, you know cybersecurity is important if you're on this digital transformation journey. TX1 Networks has the solutions for you. And you're saying to yourself, Scott, they're going to be complex. They're going to be difficult. No, TX1's taken that into consideration, and they provide a suite of solutions that truly meet your cybersecurity needs. Go out to tx1-networks.com and find out more. You're not going to be disappointed.
Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott Mckenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
Yeah, all right. Welcome to Industrial Talk, the ever-expanding industrial ecosystem that is dedicated to solving problems. It is featuring people that are bold, like you, brave, like you dare greatly, you, and you're solving problems, and you are just making the world a better place. That's not hyperbole. That is a scientific fact. All right, in the hot seat, we got Jon Clay. He is the VP of Threat Intelligence at Trend Micro. Look, I'm looking at a stat card. 26 years at Trend Micro. He's seen it all. And I'm telling you right now, you need to know, and you need to phone up on definitely cybersecurity. Let's get cracking. Yeah. So, if you're in digital transformation, you know the buzz out there? How do we secure it? Yep. Manufacturing? How do we secure it? Everything. Industry? How do we secure it? Jon brings I'm just telling you right now, this podcast is a note-taking podcast. So you listen, you take notes, and if you didn't get it, you rewind, you take notes some more, because he's rifling through. So many just challenges and solutions that you just need to be aware of, whether you like it or not. And if you have to take a breather, you put it on pause, because he is not letting up. He has seen so much. It's an exciting time. And I've been wanting to have a real meaty conversation around cybersecurity, what to do, how to do it. Because I think, personally, Scott Mckenzie, ever so humble, I believe if we don't do this right, if we don't protect our digital transformation, this journey, then it's at risk, because then you're going to get companies that are going to say, I hear you. I see the importance of digital transformation, but the risk of somebody coming into my business and wreaking havoc far outweighs the benefit, and I've just got to. So we've got to do this right. It's important because digital transformation is important. This stuff is important. All right, I want you to go out to Industrial Talk. Outside of the fact that it's got a lot of great content, it is a massive collection of great thinkers. But we're going to be gearing up we've got 2 webinar series, 6 parts, maybe 7, looking for it. One is going to be in the state of energy and utilities. And it's state of. It's not going to dive deep to a certain extent, but we came back from Distributech, and there was just so much buzz going on, a lot of changes taking place within the energy and utility space. We're going to focus in on that. We're going to bring in these great thinkers, and you're going to enjoy it. Yeah, you just are. I guarantee it. It's a guarantee. I'm not going to send you anything, but it is a guarantee. And the other one is in manufacturing. Now, we're going to do stuff in cybersecurity, but the reality is, just like in energy and utilities, right? There's a cyber component. What does that look like? In manufacturing, all of the great stuff that's taking place in manufacturing, there's a cyber component. So we're going to also address that, where it links in, and all of that good stuff. All right. Now, you need to go out. You need to reach out to Jon Clay. Yep. And it's Jonklay. and it's Trend Micro. Good looking gent. We go to the same barber, by the way. And you're not going to be disappointed. Reach out, connect. This is an excellent conversation. So here's Jon, and enjoy the conversation. All right, Jon, welcome to Industrial Talk. Thank you very much for finding time here. Look at it. He's waving his hands. If we're out on video, he's a nice guy, too. How you doing, Jon? Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Scott, doing great. Happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
We've been working on this for some time. It's one of those, I'm passionate to be able to talk about cybersecurity, digital transformation, how it all works together. And I know listeners, you're saying, I don't want to talk about it. We have to secure our assets. We have to secure our networks. And Jon brings a wealth of knowledge. And so there you go. Jon, for the listeners out there, give us a little background, 411, on who you are.
Yeah, so I am Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Trend Micro. I've been in the cybersecurity industry, Scott, for 25 years, almost 26 now, all with Trend Micro. I did a number of different roles, but most recently what I do is I work with our threat research teams to understand what threats we're seeing out there in the world that are targeting our customers, and help bring that information and educate the population out there about cybersecurity, about the threat landscape, about the criminal actors and the malicious actors that are targeting them.
Well, I've got to ask the questions. What are you seeing? What are some of the things that are happening? Because that is just great fodder for conversations. You can make it simple, but what are you seeing out there?
Well, the big one that we're seeing right now is obviously the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, and the fact that Russia has been targeting the Ukraine critical infrastructure for quite a long time. A number of years ago, we saw them target one of the power plants and bring that down. And a lot of that was actually them learning how to target critical infrastructure and the networks that created the systems that run the operations and all that. And they learned very well, obviously, because now we're seeing in a cyber warfare, hybrid warfare, that they're actually targeting those types of industries. And, when we think about critical infrastructure, Scott, one of the things we don't think about is the misinformation, disinformation campaigns that Russia's been doing against Ukraine as part of targeting the news and the government agencies and websites that provide information to citizens. And that's a key part of the infrastructure that we have to think about as well. It's not always, power plants and water plants. It's news stations and even social media vendors that could be targeted as part of this. So, it's a very broad, unfortunately, a broad issue that these organizations can get targeted. We certainly see a lot of nation state activity, but one of the things that we're seeing in this actual conflict is the use of cyber mercenaries. And if you're not familiar with what a cyber mercenary is, I'm not,
because that's a new term. Cyber mercenaries.
These are essentially non-combatants who pick up the support of a nation state and hack for the country. So you saw it with the Conti group, which is a ransomware as a service group that pledged their allegiance to Russia and said, we will target anybody who goes after Russia. And then on the flip side, we saw Anonymous come out of the woodwork. Anonymous is a big hacktivist group. They came out and started targeting Russian networks. So you've got all these players out there now that are working for and against the nation state. And that's an interesting development that we hadn't seen much in the past. And we're going to have to deal with that type of situation too now in the future.
The learning that, okay, so I'm still stumbling on cyber mercenaries. It makes sense, right? It makes sense as so these individuals, are they being paid? Are they paid mercenaries? Are they saying, hey?
Usually not. Usually, again, they play. Well, one of the models that Russia had brought to the table years ago was that you have all these cyber criminal gangs that go and launch attacks against, other countries' businesses and stuff, and they get profit from those. And Russia goes, hey, we won't arrest you as long as when we call you to ask for your support in a nation state type activity.
No way.
We're going to let you slide. So, and that's one of the things, that's one of the challenges you have with these cyber mercenaries, is that it's kind of a gray area in cyber right now. Are they combatants? Are they non-combatants? Are they criminals? Are they not criminals? It could be all of the above. So it's really going to be a challenge.
I don't even know where to go with that one. That's interesting and frightening all at once.
Yeah.
Right. It just is.
One of the things, Scott, one thing I want to bring up is I mentioned that the early attack on the Ukraine power grid.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're seeing now is this idea of let's go hack into a network, but not do any kind of damage. Let's not do any kind of cyber criminal activity. We're not trying to profit. All we're doing is actually going in and trying to find out, can I get into an OT network? Can I get into an HMI system? Can I get into an industrial robot? And they will just do that to educate themselves on what is possible. And that's one of the things we've been seeing over the last several years, where a lot of companies may not even realize that they've been infiltrated, because the actors behind it aren't necessarily trying to do any specific activity like ransomware, for example, or exfiltrate critical data. They're just in there to learn what's possible. And that scares the heck out of me, because and then on the flip side, what they can do at the end is drop some back doors that can be accessed at a later date. So their back doors sit on these networks for potentially even years, and then they get activated when they're needed. And that's one of my biggest concerns with the Russian-Ukraine conflict right now, that Russia or one of these nation states is dropping these back doors into our critical infrastructure and just letting them sit there and basically sit and be resident but not be found. And
just dormant, and they at that time give a tap on the shoulder saying, all right, I'm calling you into action and do whatever is necessary. And we or others don't even know they exist.
Right.
How does somebody with that reality, it's happening, with that reality, how does an organization, we will get into digital transformation, but this is a better conversation right now. It's just FYI. How does a company just say, okay, I'm going to take the position that I've been hacked in some way, shape, or form. I've got some back doors. Let's just take that approach. What are some of the things that can be done from a company's perspective to say, okay, I have them, but I'm creating a wall?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that you can think about doing. One is that command and control infrastructure, which is what keeps them having access into the network. You can try and identify that. So you look for communications outbound communications to command and control servers, or servers in other areas of the world that maybe you don't do business in, and that because that's where they've put their infrastructure. The other thing is you look for files and certain types of executables that maybe not typically resident on those systems. So you're looking for anomalies, and that's the hard part, because unless you know exactly what files and applications are supposed to run on those systems, and you look for anything that's out of sync, so to speak, that's the only way to really try to identify them. The other option, obviously, is if they do get activated, then you try to find that activity and identify it. But it's going to be difficult, because they do they hide their tracks very well. They put a lot of obfuscation in a lot of these files and executables that they drop on these systems. But yeah, but you want to look for that kind of stuff.
That begs the question, and the question is, your organization, Trend Micro, you're constantly, and you having 25, 26 years, have got to be, you've got to have your fingers on the pulse of all of the things that are taking place and all the things that are changing and all of the, and to try to keep current as much as you possibly can. I don't know how you do it.
It's a big
seriously,
job.
It's a huge job.
I mean, we've been in this industry for 34 years now. And the one thing that we know is that change will happen regularly. And so we've been able to innovate over the years. We have we have people on staff that all they look at is command and control servers and that infrastructure. And their whole job is to go and find these systems out there in the world and then add them to our protection capabilities. And the same is true with backdoors. Same is true with botnets. All that kind of stuff. Our new, TX1, which is our new venture with Moxa that we've done recently, they're fully dedicated to the ICS, SCADA, OT network protection and understanding what are the threats that are targeting that type of infrastructure, and then coming up with technologies. And we're using a ton of artificial intelligence, machine learning, whatever technology is needed. The nice thing is, because we are such a big organization and have so much resources and capabilities, we're able to build a lot of proof of concept engines and technologies to detect these threats. And we take the ones that work best, and then we move on to the next one. So, over the years, we've been able to innovate tremendously in giving back to the community, giving back to the industry with some stuff. We've got a number of open source technologies that are in open source now that we've provided, and so it is a difficult thing. We're always trying to stay ahead of the bad guys, but as you know, Scott, they're very good. They're very well funded nowadays, and they do things that are difficult to defend against.
And now all they have to do is get it right once, right? And they can continue to try to find that soft underbelly in any type of network, and they can just get it once. And then you have to be 100%. You got to, or if you find a threat, if you see something happening, how do you compress that time? How do you correct
the dwell time? If you can minimize the dwell time that an actor or a group is inside your network, obviously that's what your ultimate goal is. The reality, Scott, is that you're probably going to get infected. You're probably going to get compromised. So then it comes back to, how quickly can I identify that I have been infected and infiltrated? I mean, look at ransomware, for example. Ransomware is the most noisy threat that ever was created in the world, right? Because as soon as ransomware hits, all of a sudden all your screens come up with a message that says, you've been hacked by Conti or Revel or Sodinokibi, and you owe us a ransom. And here's how to get access, and negotiate that ransom. So you're infected. But the problem is that that's the last stage of typical campaigns that are against your organization. They've probably been in your network for weeks, sometimes months already, doing things. And then the last stage is, let's just drop some ransomware to get some more money out of the deal.
So if I was an organization and I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm already getting a little upset, for lack of a better term. What are some of the pushbacks that you're seeing? We've got this whole digital transformation journey thing happening, and it's, from my perspective, it's still tip of the iceberg. Everybody's just sort of coming up with more use cases and doing this and sending it here and analyzing that. And putting a device out there, all over your network. What's the pushback? I would imagine, if I was, CEO for the day of some company, I would say, first thing we're going to do, any strategy, we need to make sure that our security strategy is in place and solid, and not something that's squiffy.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I would recommend an organization to. First and foremost is understand your attack surface. So do some attack surface discovery, which means essentially look at your external IP segment and identify all of the IPs that are external facing. And then once you do that, scan those and find out, where are the weaknesses. Do I have open ports? Do I have open services? Do I have a couple of accounts that haven't updated their username password, or they aren't set up with multi-factor authentication? Do I have vulnerabilities that haven't been patched on those systems? You do the same for your internal attack surface, your internal network, and that includes your accounts, right? Your administrator accounts, which are critical. Do they have two-factor authentication set up to access those? Because if they don't, the likelihood that you're going to get brute forced, or you're going to get some account taken over because there's a really weak password associated with it, is pretty high. So once you identify all these, and then you mentioned the devices, right? I'm throwing devices all over my network. And a lot of times these devices don't have the capability of running security software. So now you have to think about, how do I protect those assets? One, how do I identify that they're on my network? But then two, how can I protect those assets through a layered approach and, network-based approach, whatever it might be. But you identify your assets, and then you start looking at what are the risks associated with those assets. Are there open ports? Are there vulnerabilities that have to be patched? Are there, or virtually patched or something? So then you start building out that capability and understanding. And then you can start applying your security controls based on the risk level you're willing to take associated with all that information, whether it's data that you want to protect, devices you want to protect, whatever it might be. The other aspect that a company absolutely has to do is build an incident response plan, and build that plan in a way that you recognize that if I am attacked and I've got business critical systems that are down, I've got data that was exfiltrated, how do I make sure that I have business continuity in place? I can make sure my critical systems and processes are still running day-to-day operations, et cetera. If I happen to have data exfiltrated and do I have a plan to negotiate with the criminals? Do I have somebody who knows how to negotiate a ransom or an extortion attack? And make sure you want to get all of this up front and then run that plan through and exercise it to make sure everybody understands their role, what they play, how they're supposed to address it. You want to have your number to the FBI or to law enforcement, because you probably want to have them involved. Your cyber insurance company, you want them on speed dial in case something happens. So all of that, I think, is, that's a lot. I've said a lot, but unfortunately, that's almost table stakes in order to be at the level that you need to be at to minimize that risk of compromise.
I think it's a non-negotiable. I think you need to do that. I'm sure that their companies say, no, not us. We're not going to get, hacked or whatever you want to call it. That's the other person. It's sort of like, but I think that if any company that has a desire to go down this digital transformation, it's just opening up other opportunities for penetration into their networks in some way, shape, or form. It just is. And the reality, Scott, is there is a ton of small business manufacturers, that are vendors of other big corporations, and they have access to that big corporation's network through and so what a lot of these malicious actors are doing, what we call island hopping, which is I'm going to target the small little vendor who probably thinks, oh, I'm too small to get compromised or get infected, and they use their access to that bigger network to gain access to the ultimate prize, which is that big company that they do work for. And that's one of the things we're starting to see big too. And then we also call that supply chain attacks. Those are getting to become more personal, and that's why when I talk to customers who are small businesses, I always say, wow. They may not want your data. They may not even want your intellectual property. They do want your access that you have to that bigger customer of yours. Yeah, you're just a conduit. You're just a way of getting over the wall over there. And I achieve. I didn't even think of that.
Exactly. Yep.
Island hopping. Gosh. I'm becoming a smarter and more scared person every time we're talking here. All at once.
Well, obviously, I try not to do the doom and gloom as much as possible, Scott. And the good news is we are doing stuff that is very capable of preventing a lot of these attacks from happening. You have a patch management system, or you do virtual patching, which is a much easier process than actually doing the full patch. You implement that, and that can help you eliminate some exploitation of vulnerabilities that are getting into your system. Or you have a basic solution that can look for misconfigurations in your cloud account. So if I make a configuration change and I do something wrong, it flags it and says, hey, you probably shouldn't do that because you're opening that application or that device up to attack. Things like that, just basic hygiene that companies could do. And one of the reasons we may be seeing more zero-day exploits, which are exploits of a vulnerability that is unknown today, being used more and more, is because the basics are being done now by a lot of companies. So they have to go to the unknown stuff to be able to get into these companies. And so I think the defenders are getting much better at what they're doing and how they're doing it. Us as a security vendor we've done leaps and bounds of improved technologies over the last several years. We do pattern matching still, which is the old school stuff, because it still detects a ton of malware. But for that stuff that's unknown, we have artificial intelligence, machine learning, those kind of capabilities and technologies that can help an organization. It's just they have to implement them.
Couple of questions that come to mind. One, when I'm an organization and I'm listening to what you're saying, and I think it's touching a nerve, right? I'm hearing, I'm going, yeah, that's about right. I contact Trend Micro and I say, hey, I don't know how my network stacks up. I don't have a good picture of anything we got our standard, whatever, off the shelf sort of security products, whatever it might be. I would be scared to say, hey, Trent, come on in here. Take a look at our networks, do a little analysis, and then give me the sad, but what's the results?
Yeah.
I know that it would make me feel uncomfortable, but then again, I would also say, okay, good. Now what? What are the strategies? Where do I go? How do I get rid of those problems? Strengthen this up. I think that's a must. Do you find companies that's like, can you come in and
Yeah, all the time, Scott. And the old paradigm in security was, I want to run vendor A here, vendor B here, vendor C here, because if one misses it, somebody else is going to detect it.
Yeah.
The problem with that old school mentality is that every threat or every attack today is customized to the user, to that victim. Yeah. And so the first time you're going to see any part of that attack is at one time, and that's the only time you're going to see it. So vendor A, B, and C running at these different points in my network are going to see the threat at the first time at the same time. And so what is needed today is more of a platform approach where you have products working in conjunction together that can collaborate and coordinate themselves together to be able to see this entire attack life cycle that is going on inside your organization. And that's where our Trend Micro One platform, a unified cybersecurity platform approach, is actually improving the way organizations are able to identify, detect, and prevent and detect these attacks that are hitting them all the time. And so, we're regularly doing demos, and customers and non-customers come in and say, hey, can you take a look at this? And, we'll come in and we'll actually talk to you about what are your needs? What is your risk associated with your organization? And then how can we customize a cybersecurity plan to help improve and protect your organization? And so that's what we try to do nowadays. And it seems to be working. Like I said, one of the benefits that we have compared to a lot of our competitors is our breadth of coverage. So we do cover endpoints, and the endpoints could be, servers, it could be virtual servers, it could be mobile devices, it could be IoT devices, industrial IoT devices. Through our TX1 solutions. It could be an OT network. The regular network, we got network scanners that can look for lateral movement and worms that go across the network. We've got products at the messaging layer, the web layer. We've got cloud infrastructure, our Cloud One platform that looks at if you're moving to an AWS or an Azure or a Google Cloud, we've got stuff that can do that. So, so you look at that and we're seeing, I think we get right now about 2.5 trillion events a day that we bring in and analyze. It's just
that's with a T.
Threat activity.
It's a T.
Yeah, with T with a trillion.
That's jaw dropping. And I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I know that for us to be successful, companies to be successful, industry to be successful, we have to just recognize the fact that exists out there. What do we do to sort of harden our network? A couple of questions. One, we've had the pandemic. We have a lot of people that have transitioned to their home office. Mm-hmm. How do you manage something like that? Because it's one thing to be within, brick and mortar, four walls, here we are, we're here. But now you've got your workforce that's at home, whatever. How do we ensure that that's safe too?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Scott, you say that, because we've had a couple of customers that have had us in to do a security awareness, part of their security awareness training for their employees who work at home, because we have, like I said, we've got a whole consumer part of our business where we sell consumer-based products. We even have a home network scanner that scans traffic going into and out of the home. And last year we had over 2.5 billion events that we analyzed and threats that we detected going in and out of home networks. And so you have these employees that are working at home, and they aren't experts at how to set up their router, right? Their home router, how to set that up. So the companies are struggling because there's two pieces to this. One, you have your work computer that you're using and your work network and stuff, but then you have all these home devices that aren't owned by the organization, and they're not going to manage those for that employee. And yet you have threat actors that are, like we talked about, that island hopping, that are going to maybe look at getting into the home network and then laterally moving because they get access to the office computer in the home network, and they laterally move into the network. So so we're trying to educate these employees on how to improve their personal cybersecurity in their home network. Besides then, organizations dealing with their work from home employees by implementing, you've got, encrypted networks and so forth, that tunnels that you're setting up, things like that, to ensure that things are safe. A lot of companies are moving to cloud-based applications, so the data doesn't reside physically on their computers, but they reside in a cloud database or data center. And that's very good at making sure that critical data and that privacy stuff is much better protected than we've seen in the past.
It's interesting. When you see threats, when you experience or when you try to eradicate new threats, see trends, you're in the trillions. Is there a community that you sort of work with and saying, hey, here's a new threat here? I just be a part of a body that tries to keep current with all of this.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges we have in terms of, public threat information sharing today, because there isn't really one entity out there that does it for everybody around the world. It's usually pockets. So, like, for example, we work with NCIC in Washington, D.C., which is the National Cybersecurity Information Sharing Group. CISA is part of that. Yeah. And, if you've seen CISA recently, they did the whole Shields Up for critical infrastructure. So Biden administration put up and CISA put out the Shields Up recommendations, and that has some great information for companies that want to learn how to deal with these threats and how to protect themselves. So NIST does some other stuff, but so we share information with those organizations. Our bug bounty program, which is our 0-day initiative group, who actually get bugs from independent contractors and researchers out there, and they share their bugs with them. We can pay them a bounty, but then we work with like Microsoft, and we work with some of the entities that publish the vulnerabilities out there and publicly disclose the vulnerabilities, and then we use the information to build IPS signatures to ensure our customers are protected through virtual patches. There's a lot of sharing going on out there. But again, I think that the biggest challenge that most people have and organizations have is, obviously it's a global issue, but there's no really one global central place where all that information is shared. And that's something that's going to have to be looked at potentially in the future. But for now, the main beneficiaries for us is our customers, because they're protected, obviously. But we do also share a lot of the information with our peers in the industry. That's been a model that's worked in the past. If you recall, just recently with the Russian invasion, there were some wipers that were launched by Russia, and a couple of our peers in the industry found those wipers, and they shared them publicly to the world and let them know. So, I'm hopeful that in the future we'll see a little bit more of this public sharing of threat intelligence that'll happen.
It's interesting, the conversation around cyber, around protection, and all of the, and in industry. I find that outside of you and companies like yours, which I think is an important conversation, and you bring a sense of real market insights and threats and all that, and that's good stuff. People are, there's a pushback or a reluctance to share my dirty laundry as a company and saying, yeah, hey, I was penetrated and attacked, and it went here, and I did this, and I lost that. I think what you're doing and what you're sharing is so vitally important with industry. And I'm not asking for anybody to share their dirty laundry. What I am asking is that there needs to be a recognition that you need to collaborate with trusted people, trusted organizations to be able to do this right. And I think you guys have a decent view, a real good view, in fact, that you're not trying to prevent work. Like, it's always like, my cyber people, I can't get anything done. But that's not the case. You have to still be protected and can get work done, but you can do both. And I think that's a message that I want to be able to share.
I mean, one of the things that we did initially when we first started building our cloud infrastructure solutions, it was more about efficiency and making sure that your VMs could spin up as quickly as possible. You could have as many VMs on a server as possible. So because we built native controls, and we didn't just, in the past you used to see this, let's just slap on the old stuff into the new technology and just make it work. That doesn't work anymore. You have to build natively. It's just like with, when we recommend for customers who are building their own applications or building their own devices, you have to build security from the beginning of that life cycle of that product all the way through, because that's the only way you're going to be able to make sure it's secure. An IoT device, for example, in the past, it's always been, I got to get it out to market as fast as possible. And it's only going to have a year-long life cycle, so I'm not even going to bother with dealing with vulnerabilities that are found in that thing. That's the wrong way to think about it. You have to build it secure from the beginning to the end, so that it can't be taken advantage. Now, one thing you mentioned, Scott, is I do think there's been some effort in the U.S. government and within some of the industries to regulate a little bit more on the breach notifications. So we're starting to get more breach notifications because it's kind of a requirement now through regulations that information gets out there. Now, the challenge is you don't tend to get a lot of the details out very early. So you have to wait a while before you get the details of how the attack worked and how it progressed. But hopefully we start getting narrow that window a little bit more. But I do think we are going to see more and more of these types of regulations coming into play. For sure, the U.S. government and all their agencies and networks are under these kind of things. Private industry, we're seeing a little bit more. The financial industry, SEC came out with some stuff recently. We'll probably see it moving in more into it. Obviously, with you and in the critical infrastructure, with energy and all those, they're pretty well regulated now, and they're getting even more regulation built into on the cyber side. So I'm hopeful that we'll see improvements over the following years, but certainly the malicious actors out there, like you said, they just got to figure out how to do it once and get in once, and then they're it's end game for them.
I think the parting message that I hear is, one, first off, you got to find trust. If you're in the world of digital transformation, if you're going down that road, if you're trying to collect data from devices on your network, you need to also, a part of that strategic effort, get up front with your cyber strategy, put some things in place, and be a part at the beginning, not at the end, at like an afterthought, at the beginning. Two, I think that we need to collaborate. Business needs to find those trusted professional, those companies that they can work with to do it. And I mean, that to me is important. And that's always been, it's like, if I'm in the IoT world, who do I trust to deploy my system. The same thing has to exist. That whole, I got to find my team to collaborate properly and to do it right. And I think that if you think you could do this on your own, I think you're kidding yourself. There's no way.
You know, we have this, there's a huge lack of trained personnel out there, right? We've got a workforce
there you go.
issue.
Yeah.
And so looking at a managed service, whether it's a managed service provider or it's somebody like Trend Micro who offers a managed service to our customers, we have the expertise on staff. We can hire them, we can build them, and we can augment what you're doing internally as an organization. So it was like I was telling you with incident response. If you don't have the expertise to negotiate the ransom, there's organizations out there that's what they do day in and day out. So go hire them. Or you have a group that does incident response. If you don't know how to do incident response and get the logs and analyze the logs, bring in a vendor that can do it for you. So definitely the partnership piece is huge, and it's going to continue to be huge.
No brainer. Absolutely. A couple of things I'm taking away. I think that's interesting where they have what you talked a little bit about, backdoor, that incident response plan. Maybe some people have it already in place. The island hopping approach, that's really interesting. And then, of course, you know, me, if I'm a remote worker, I'm sort of like a little island, and I can hop into a bigger island. So all absolutely wonderful, wonderful suggestions. Now, John, how does somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to trendmicro.com. A lot of our research, we do research all the time and publish it. It's free to the public. We don't gate anything, Scott. So you can go and download. We've got tons of research, whether it's in critical infrastructure. We've got researchers that actually went and hacked into industrial robots, and we have them looking at the energy sector, and we in the reports give you information about what types of attacks you're going to see in the future against these types of industries. So all of that is in our research section of our website, again, trendmicro.com. If you want to contact us, there's information on the website. You can do that. We've got free trials that people can take a look at and download and utilize. The whole TX1, especially on TX1, you know, I know your OT network folks are probably really struggling right now with how to understand the threat that's targeting them, but more importantly, how do I defend against these types of attacks? And that's where our TX1 solutions, whether it's our Edge IPS or some other technology, we may have a thumb drive you can plug into one of those robots that has a USB port, and it'll actually scan the robot for malicious code and stuff. So that kind of stuff, just, you know, we'd love to chat with anybody and have a conversation with an organization and just to understand what you're going through and how we can help.
I like that. That's John. Trend Micro's the company. Absolutely important conversation. We were sort of touching a little bit about digital transformation, but boy, this was a really spectacular conversation, John. Thank you very much for being on.
Yeah, we can have more of these if you want. With 26 years of experience in cybersecurity, I've got a plethora of knowledge up here in the brain. It's just a matter of getting it out sometimes, right?
Chiseling it out.
As you get older, that can be harder and harder.
Excellent, John. Thank you very much for being on Industrial
Thanks,
Talk.
Scott. Take care.
All right, listeners, we're going to wrap it up on the other side. We're going to have all the contact information for John at Industrial Talk. So stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
Yes, it is Industrial Talk wrap-up time. That was Jon Clay, VP Threat Intelligence, Trend Micro. You can tell he knows more about cybersecurity than me, because I'm telling you, man, I was gripped. There's just a lot going on, and I'm totally stoked at the fact that we've got people like John, Trend Micro, helping to doing their best to keep everything safe and protected. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's a heck of a mission. All right, once again, we're going to be having a couple of series and webinars. I call them live podcasts because webinars, I don't like the name. So they're live podcasts. The one's going to be on energy and utility, stayed up, and manufacturing, stayed up. A part of that, of course, is going to be a cybersecurity component. Yep. All right. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly, hang out with people like John, and you're going to change the world. Thank you very much for hanging out with me on Industrial Talk. We're going to have another great conversation shortly, so stay tuned.